This is the Work Smart Hypnosis podcast, session number 235. Scott Sandland on Hypnosis for Teens.
Welcome to the Work Smart Hypnosis podcast with Jason Linett, your professional resource for hypnosis training and outstanding business success. Here's your host, Jason Linett.
You took my light, you drained me down, but that was then and this is now. Now look at me. This is the part of me that you're never going to take away from me. No. Somehow, every time I have Scott Sandland on the podcast, we end up quoting Katy Perry. So, of course, having to open with those words. Hey, Jason Linett here, welcoming you back to the program once again, and welcoming frequent guest Scott Sandland back to the program to have a conversation, which was actually one that in some ways we've had over the years in other formats, but wanting to capture it, first of all, for your benefit, but also quite openly for my benefit as well, to hear some of the nuances of, as we'll come to call it in this conversation, the theatrical blocking about working with troubled teens, working in situations with high emotional risk, and also being aware of the fact that we are in very different times right now, and where often the blame gets pointed to in terms of social media and strategies around that. The fact is, this is just what our culture has become, and to be mindful around how we build that environment for success. So you're going to hear some amazing nuances in terms of the use of hypnotic phenomenon, in terms of getting that immediate buy-in. The fact that, as Scott puts it, let me show you how you can do some cool things with your brain. Some nuances in terms of how I've done the work over the years too, though I may be modifying some of mine to match some of Scott's phrasing. And then specifically, a big part of this conversation is on the setup, the layout of how it is that as we work with that teenager, how it is we deal with the parents, how it is we deal with the dynamic of who's around, and just the best ways to really be that advocate for change. And what I love about this conversation is Scott talking about how he's very often in that situation where his client technically is there against their will, and how to turn that into a win, how to turn that into a strength, and then get the session in motion to create some outstanding results to really, in many ways, if you've gone back through the library and listened to Scott's previous appearances, helping to really hedge off some of those situations that very often we end up dealing with as they're adults. Let's resolve these issues at a much earlier stage. So some real takeaways in this conversation that I know you're going to put into use. And even if these are some ways that are not quite the way that you're currently working, look at the element of, again, the theatrical blocking. How do we set up that environment for change? That I feel is one of the biggest takeaways in this conversation. So listen to this one once again. We're going to put some details in the show notes too. Also, we eventually make a rather abrupt transition, just as we got talking about the original theme, also talking about the upcoming HypnoThoughts Platinum event, which is happening the very last weekend of February into the first weekend of March. It's all the same days out in San Diego, which once again, easiest job in the world, San Diego weatherman. It's going to be nice today. But the upcoming HypnoThoughts Platinum event, details online at htplatinum.net. Instead of being the big event with a whole bunch of speakers, this is 3 days deep diving with 6 speakers. I'm one of them, as well as, see if I can do this from memory while I frantically pull up the website, along with David Snyder, Melissa Tiers, Kelly T. Woods, Ken Guzzo, again myself, as well as Steve Rame. So deep diving into specific topics with actionable things you can put into work right away. I'll be talking specifically on search engine optimization. Ken Guzzo will be talking about secrets behind a 100% referral practice. Steve Rame talking about the importance of unconscious communication. I love the title of this one. Kelly T. Woods on living hypnotically, a hands-on workshop. David Snyder on hypnotic energy secrets. Melissa Tiers talking about a masterclass in brain change. As I'm looking at the lineup, how have I gone this far and not yet had Steve Rame on the program? Stand by at least between now and the end of the year. Future Work Smart Hypnosis guest, Steve Rame, episode number coming soon. So check out the details of that event. It's being held to a smaller audience than what is typical of the HypnoThoughts Live convention, which is upwards of 1,000 people. This one is a little bit more intimate. This way you're going to get that hands-on time with all of us. Check out the details at htplatinum.net. And with that, let's jump directly into this content-packed conversation. Here we go, episode number 235, Scott Sandland on Hypnosis for Teens.
So I started working with kids when I was a kid. I got certified in hypnosis when I was 18 and started seeing clients pretty much right away. So the idea of working with, quote unquote, grown-ups for grown-up stuff
Hmm.
was trickier. Helping somebody through his divorce or working with people who were mad at their teenage kids was more difficult than working with, teenagers and kids for the stuff that teenagers and kids have. In terms of rapport, in terms of, earning the right, in terms of all of those things, it just made a ton of sense.
Hmm.
So, and I look young. I still look young, but back then I looked even younger. So working with young kids at a place called the Children's Dental Center was actually really great. So the Children's Dental Center was a place that I worked at for maybe 4 years, maybe even a little longer. And it was the idea that in inner city LA, there's a bunch of kids that need dental care that are like slipping through the cracks. And so USC and UCLA had schools of dentistry that had students that needed hours of working with real people. And there were, all of these kids that had real need. And so it was an obvious pairing where the dental hygiene schools and the schools of dentistry would, have different days of the weeks where USC would come in, UCLA would come in a different day, and so on and so forth. And they would have me come in. And everyone was really excited when I showed up because I was Hypnosis Day to the students. To the USC and UCLA dental students, it was Hypnosis Day. But to the kids and the parents who were the actual patients, I was just a guy. Like we
Yeah,
didn't
which
use.
I know times that you've been on here before, we've talked of that theme of, being in residence at a drug treatment facility, being there in residence working with the dental issues. Did you find that there was an advantage of being that, let's call it this, the guest starring role as opposed to the one that they were specifically coming to see?
Yeah, because they didn't. No one made an appointment knowing that I was going to be there, or even considering what if they have a hypnotist. That wasn't on their agenda. These are like working class English as a second language families that just care about their kids, and so me showing up without the primary responsibility of dental care meant my entire job was about patient experience. Specifically, a lot of the kids there had been traumatized in their previous dental experiences. And so they had understandable anxieties and fears and things like that. And that would only get made worse every once in a while. They had to do a thing called papoosing a kid. And a papoose means they're strapping a kid down to a board so that he or she doesn't writhe around so much so they can get actual important dental work done.
Which we like
But
to call that an ISE.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's obviously traumatic. And to their credit, everyone involved hated doing it. And that's why they brought me in. The founder of the Children's Dental Center said, Scott, we want this to be a thing that stops. And so we want to make sure that every day you're there, no kid ever gets papoosed or strapped down. And in 4.5 years, something like that, no kid was ever strapped down while I was there, or any of my students. They were really cool about letting me bring in my own students and having them get some time there too. And so anytime hypnosis was there, no kids were getting strapped down. And that meant we were like breaking that, that chain of trauma in dentistry in that kid's life. And so you'd get these kids that normally on their chart, it would say, this kid's a real crier, this kid's a real screamer, this kid's, a real problem. And we would target those. I would target those kids to give them a new experience. And so all I do is just hang out in the waiting room, really. And I'd work with, 5 or 6 or 10 kids at a time. And I would do, like, I just kind of talk to them about, hey, I work with dentists, but I'm not a dentist. And going to your point on, being the sort of the co-star, I could say, look, I'm here to teach you tricks that makes going to the dentist easier. And that's all I do. And I was dressed down so they believed that I wasn't, a professional.
Yeah, and imagine in that situation too, you weren't necessarily launching into a standard hypnosis pre-talk.
No, I mean, really, the parents didn't speak English, and my Spanish is okay, but my Spanish is not good enough to give a pre-talk in Spanish. So no, the word I kept using was brain. I was like, I'm just going to teach you how your brain works. I'm going to teach you how your brain works. And so I would do finger magnets and I would say, you can use your imagination so well, it makes it real. And so we would do finger magnets and then we'd do the eye lock, right? Just gluing their eyes shut. And I would be doing this, in groups. So it was, sort of like a stage show in that respect where you'd have, 5 or 6 or 10 kids all sitting there. I said, okay, we're all going to glue our eyes shut. And the way I would do it is I would first do the finger magnets, and then I would do eye closure. And I would do the eye closure twice. And the first time I would do it with the trick that makes it have to work. And I'll talk about that in a second. And then the second time I would do it legit. So a lot of people know what I'm talking about when I say that, but just for the people who don't, when you're doing the eye closure and eye lock technique, if you get the person to roll their eyes up like they're looking through the top of their head, physiologically, it just holds your eyes shut. You've got to roll your eyes back down to be able to open them again. And so the first time I would have them glue their eyes shut, I would have them look up, and I would tell them it's an on-off switch. I'd say, in a minute, not yet, but in a minute, I'm going to have you close your eyes. We're going to glue them shut, and you're going to be in charge, because the whole thing's about empowering them. So I would say, I'm going to show you that you're in control of your brain. So the way we're going to do is you're going to close your eyes, and when you look up, that's going to turn this on, and you will glue your eyes shut. And when you want to be able to open your eyes again, you'll look down at the tip of your nose. That'll turn this off, and you'll be able to open your eyes again. And so they would do it that way. And then we would do it the legit way without looking up. And I would say, now you can do it without doing that. You can just imagine looking up and it'll work. And it would. And then from there, when the kids went back into the treatment rooms and the operatories, I would be able to just kind of walk around and say, hey, show the dentist how you can glue your eyes shut. Hey, show the dentist how you can do this, do that. And then I would just roll that into patter for either dissociation or empowerment or relaxation or whatever made sense with the kid. But that meant I was working with, 25 kids a day, any day that I was there minimum. And, there were days where it'd be a lot more than that. So that was where I started doing a lot of, kid and young teen work, sort of like junior high school levels, the oldest they would do.
Yeah. And would you find that was something? I mean, I'd share a through line here that, making use of some sort of quick win with anyone coming into the office, especially the teenagers, because very often it's the fact that mom or dad is bringing them in for something that's perhaps originally their goal. And to get that buy-in, that whole theme of, I love the phrasing of show you how you can use your brain. Mine has always been, I'm going to show you you've got much more control over how you feel than you've thought possible, especially if you can give them that experience of thinking about something differently, using their phrasing of using your powers for good rather than for bad.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a big part of what I do more with adolescents. And I work with a lot of teenagers, and teen anxiety is a real important thing for me. And just that space has been something that I've put a lot of effort into, in part because of the drug rehabs I've worked in. I've just seen so much of, we're spending all this time and energy cleaning up the mess, to be honest. And if we could get to these kids earlier and get in front of it, it'd be awesome. And so when I'm talking to those kids, whether they're at risk or not, especially kids with anxiety and stress, those are kids who tend to be kinesthetic. So I talk to them about that. Once you calibrate it and you realize that they are kinesthetic, you can say, okay, here's the deal. School is mostly about, see the words on the whiteboard, sound out the words. So that's mostly seeing and hearing, but feeling isn't taught that much. And so you're a feeler. And if you're a feeler, that means you're not being taught how to use your superpower, the thing that's best about you. You don't know how to use. And I tell kids all the time, and teenagers, that part in the superhero movie where the person in the beginning doesn't know how to use their superpower, so it's making their life worse. And then they get to that trainer or master who gives them the skills and helps them refine their superpower so that it can make their life better. That's what we've got to do with you. Because right now you've got this pointed at all the bad stuff. And if we can get you to point this at the better stuff, you're going to be more empathetic, more emotionally connected, more excited, more adventurous, more loving person. And right now, all you're feeling is pointed at stress, anxiety, problems, etc.
I'm laughing just because I'm imagining the way that such a thing usually plays out, that suddenly they're sitting there nodding their head already going, oh yeah, that is what I need to do. As opposed to, we're going to come in and work on your problem, which is what they've been hearing a lot of up until that point.
Yeah. And a lot of who I get kids against their will in my office all the time. And I would say I probably have a higher percentage of clients who have come against their will than probably almost any hypnotist who's working today. A large percentage of my clientele does not want to be there. And so getting that buy-in in the first 10 minutes is a really important part of my job, because either it's a kid who's gotten in trouble in school, or, it's a teenager who's there because a judge is making them be there, or a physician is making them be there. And they aren't just skeptical. They're bordering on willfully disobedient.
Mhm.
And, last week on Friday, I had a client in my office, and he and his mom sat down, and he goes, "Well, I'm just here because she's making me, so she can do all the talking."
Hmm.
And converting that into an engaged client and that partnership and buy-in is the job.
Yeah, because without that, there is no job to do.
Right. Right. So yeah, I mean, for me, that's that age group like I said, I've done a lot with the kids, like the Children's Dental Center. I was working with 5-year-olds,
Mhm.
and up to junior high school. And now I'm working with a ton of kids who are really in the 15 to 22 range. Like that window of time, I think is underrepresented and underserved. And it's disproportionately going through a lot of challenge and trauma right now. So I'm working with kids who are dropping out of Stanford and Harvard because the stress is getting to them.
Yeah.
And so these are high functioning, brilliant, hardworking people that, something's getting the best of them, and getting them back on track is super rewarding. I love doing it.
Yeah, so there's some questions that I just generally had myself, because that's a situation, the high performer. I've phrased it for years that the person, and let's build some unfortunate stereotypes here, the person who perhaps is maybe 350 pounds overweight, the person who is self-medicating with ridiculous amounts of alcohol or upwards of 3, 4 packs a day of cigarettes, those are not necessarily the folks that are generally calling us. They perhaps should be, but like most of my weight loss clients are that last 20 to 30 pounds. The couple who came in the day to quit smoking used to be 2 packs a day. And in the last couple of years on their own, they've went down to like a half pack a day. So is there something that you're doing? So these people that are those high performers, but it's that one thing. And especially nowadays, I mean, you've described all the teens that I'm seeing, that it's not the Billy wants to play baseball better. No, he's being scouted as the sophomore.
Yeah.
And you hear the stories of just the amount of stress that builds up from the initial phone call. I'm assuming mom is coming in, and whether it's you or someone else screening on your behalf, are there things that you're doing in that initial interaction that are setting the stage for how the process is going to go?
Yeah, there's a lot that you have to do right there. Especially when you're working with minors. The college age students are technically not minors, but they're there, because a parent wants them to be there. Even if they've said, "Mom and Dad, I need help," the parent is usually the person finding me.
Yeah.
But especially when you're working with minors, I think it's critical to set up a number of relationship boundaries and parameters right away. So one of the things I do is I make sure that everyone hears me say, "Look, the son is my client. Mom or dad or whoever's in the room, you may be paying for this, but let me be very clear. You are not my client. And everything that your son or daughter says to me is 100% confidential unless they very specifically ask me to talk to you about things. And the only sentence you'll ever hear me say about your kid is this sentence. You got a really great kid, and I'm really happy with our progress." And that is the only thing I will ever say.
Nice.
So what's going to happen is in 3 weeks, you're going to forget I have said this. And mom or dad is going to, because they care, because they love you, and because they want to make sure things are going well, they'll just sincerely ask me, like during scheduling or during drop off or pickup or something, they'll just say, "Hey, how's it going with Mikey?" And in that moment, as a reflex, I will say, "You got a really great kid there, and I'm really happy with our progress." And they look at me,
Nice.
they're like, "Oh yeah, that's right."
Oh, it's the thing he said. Yes.
Yeah. And they do ask, and it's not because they're prying, but the parents will try to get more information out of you. They'll say like, "Look, I know he's smoking pot. I just want to make sure he's not getting into trouble." And you can't respond to that.
Mhm.
Right. Like you have to be able to say like, "Look, I'm not going to take the bait on you telling me your kid's smoking pot." Like his confidentiality, her confidentiality is too important for me to be, fast and loose with that. And you want me to be great at my job, and that's predicated on your son or daughter trusting me, and I have to honor that.
And I mean, this is a great place where I think the last time you were on here, we talked about the theme of owning your words and recognizing what's within your character and what's not within your character. That in the last conversation when you were on here, we talked about someone who kind of found themselves in a corner by using the phrase, "Oh, yeah, well, how's that working out for you?" when they did not yet have the rapport to pull that off. And this is
Right.
kind of my preamble to say that you're a little nicer than I am. Which is the attitude of, and I'd share, there's a project in the works right now that over the years, there was originally the first set of Virginia Hypnosis videos, which were all put together professionally, tightly edited, suit and tie in every single video. And over the years with Work Smart Hypnosis, the more I wore a black t-shirt and probably dropped the F word here and there, people responded better. So there's been a blending of styles over the years. We'll say it more comfort as to who I actually am.
Sure.
So the parent would sometimes call up and say, "And we get to be in the room, right?" And I immediately smile so they can hear that. But I then say, "Well, I mean, you could, but would you accept on some level you might be part of what's going on? I'm just curious." And consistently now I don't get slapped, but I get the, "Yeah, that makes sense."
Oh,
Which my polite phrase is, "I'll give you a guest Wi-Fi code if you want to bring a computer." And they go, "Oh, that'd be great." And I'm now the hero. So having that moment of going, well, why don't you kind of respectfully stay out of it for a couple of days? Because I'll be teaching them things that they can do. And some of them are things they can be doing while you're not even aware of it. And I'll make fun of this as soon as we're all together. But to set that boundary that, again, the kid is the client. And by kid, in my case, it's probably like you, most of them are teenagers, if not 13 and up.
Yeah. And I actually want the parent in there for the pre-talk.
Yeah.
Because I want to make a scene of kicking them out of the room.
I love that.
And so I don't really care if the parent understands, how hypnosis really works or what our, benchmarks are going to be moving forward. I just want to see, or I want the kid to see that in this room, I'm in charge and I'm having the parent leave so that the kid gets to have privacy in this space.
Which the beauty of let's call it the theatrical blocking of that here's a moment where there is a very clear exit, and this is where the process begins. I mean, I've got multiple rooms in the office, so we do that pre-talk, we do that opening preamble in the lobby, and it becomes a big moment of, great, you follow me back here.
Yeah.
And we're having that exit.
Yeah, and having, like you said, theatrical blocking, right? The staging of that. People who are new to hypnosis probably won't fully appreciate how much these little things make the actual client work so much easier. If you do all this stuff, it means the amount of effort that goes into the scripting and phrasing and all that, you don't have to do any of that as much to get great results because you've generated so much expectation and choreography around everything that it just stacks the deck in your favor. And when you're like me and you're seeing a lot of clients against their will, so their belief and expectation is not high, you've got to do things to shift that in your favor. So whether it's like you, Jason, like doing the pre-talk in the waiting room and then, all right, now you're ready to come into the actual room. Or with me, like I get up and I open the door and I kick the parent out nicely, but I open the door and close the door behind the parent. And then I sit down and I say, okay, so now that they're gone, is there anything you want to start talking about? Or is there anything that matters? Because there are things that the parent might bring up something in the room that I can utilize. That's something, generic, like, well, Billy's not getting his homework done. And I know he's smarter than his grades show. And, most parents would say that about their kids because that's part of being a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
Is not living up to your potential because you're still figuring out what your potential is. And, U.S. history is probably not the most important thing in your life that year.
I'm flashing back to having to say to parents and having to use this more for the little ones that, well, I bet your 9-year-old doesn't know what the word intervention means, but they know what it feels like.
Yeah, it's a good line.
So I know, right? So we're gonna use the environment to talk about the results that we want to create, the abilities we want to help him to build, rather than bring him in and tear him down versus here's what he's doing wrong, here's why he's too angry about things at school. So the conversation in the room all together is about what he can help himself to do better.
Right. And bringing that back to something you said a minute ago, and if in those first few minutes you can drop an F-bomb, that's probably a good thing. Because in that moment, you can say, look, I don't know what they said. I don't know what they said. I'm not looking for any of that because, to be honest, I think it's bullshit. I only want to hear from you. Giving them that moment is, and I mean it too. Like I sincerely mean that. Like I do not care what any previous clinicians have written down about this kid. I want to have a fresh start, and I want them to give me what they want to be, because this is their opportunity to start over. And that's really instructive, right? To be able to say, right now, you tell me what's important instead of they're telling me this is important. Like I said, it's a fresh start. It's an opportunity for them to think about things in that way. And I think that's useful.
Yeah, which I love. Again, back to the theatricality of it, the blocking of how show is always better than tell,
Yeah.
rather than sitting there and phrasing that to have that clear line, which is absolutely in support and in the best interest of that teenager. That, I mean, there's a category that I've fallen into because I had really great success with one of all the detachment, all the abandonment issues of this one was adopted. And as soon as they learned that, the model of the world crumbled, and now we're having to rebuild what was there before, which, because of that one category with that one person, that's now something I've seen on a regular basis, which is, as much as the parents can say, well, this is how we feel, we still love you the same way, which, left out of the story is the obvious decision as to whether or not they raise the kid knowing that, which I've clearly got my strongly held opinions on based on what I've seen. But to see how we can set that environment up that it's really you're that advocate for that one person.
Right. And you know who your responsibility and loyalty is to.
Mm-hmm.
And to keep everything I'm doing reminding me and them and demonstrating to both of us that teenager in my office is the only thing that matters right now.
Yeah.
And like I work with, high-end athletes, sometimes professional athletes. And so I'm talking to people who are being, recruited by professional teams and college teams and all that. And so I've got coaches and managers and sponsors that want to call and talk to me. And they'll say, look, we need to talk to you about how Mike's doing, how Tom's doing, because he's got blank coming up and we've got to make sure he's in a good place.
And Tom's doing really great, and I'm so proud to be a part of his process.
Yeah. You got a really great first baseman there. And I do. I just leave it just like that.
Yeah, I was about to ask how much of this translates over to those situations.
Oh, completely. Because, when you're dealing with these, early 20s high-end athletes, they are a little bit used to having, let's call it a treatment team, but it's a staff, right? So a personal trainer, a weight coach, a nutritionist, a drills coach. So they're used to having a coordinated effort helping them. And so there are times where they'll want me to be part of that communication. And, in those cases, I'm having, real specific conversations with them about what's inbounds and out of bounds.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that's few and far between compared to, kids who are, I've worked with dozens of kids who are upset because one of their friends has committed suicide. And so when you're working with that population, when you're working with, teen suicide is the second leading cause of death in people under 24. And no one is talking about this. And it is shocking to me. Everyone's talking about school shootings, which are obviously a terrible thing. But the number of kids that are dying from school shootings is nothing compared to the number of kids who are killing themselves on purpose every single day in America. And in just high schools, so forget junior high school and forget college, in just high schools in America, 3,000 students attempt suicide every single day. And of that number, 80% of them showed obvious signs that they were contemplating suicide. And So you're dealing with this population of kids who is seeing teen crisis, who is seeing this anxiety, who is afraid for a bunch of right reasons. Kids actually in schools now learn active shooter drills before they learn to read sometimes.
Yeah.
And so,
Just this morning, we were getting the messages about, oh, another successful lockdown drill. I'm like, that's an interesting choice of words.
yeah, yeah, they have lockdown drills. And when I was touring schools for my son, preschools, they emphasized safety and security above teaching the kids.
Yeah.
And so when you think about growing up in that space, which these kids are doing, and you talk to them and they say sentences like, well, I remember 9/11 and then nothing's gotten better since then. You can understand their stresses and their anxieties, and there's a ton of other stuff, and it's a very complicated thing. It's not rap music that's making them upset. But it's not video games that's making them upset. There's a lot happening. And
I mean, I give the reference back to, and this is probably why I'm not working with as many high schools as I used to. And it's something, and then again, from the same token, it could be every reason why I should have doubled down and done more of them. But I found it more rewarding to be in the room working with people one to one. That, here would be the school. There's one school that I booked 5 times and I never did it because without fail, I'd get the phone call. He goes, well, we need to reschedule. Why? And he explained, same conversation we're having. I go, okay, well, how about next month? He goes, no, unfortunately. And again, we could look at this from our hypnotic language perspective, but the disclaimer is he was not saying this to the students. He goes, well, we need to pick like in the springtime because unfortunately, because we've had one, odds are we're going to have at least 2 more in the next 2 months.
Yeah.
That becomes the pattern. And the third year was the most eye-opening because he goes, we had another Romeo and Juliet where the parents found out and now 2 were gone. And he goes, this is even worse because we're going to have it again. So to hear this, and I look at how, now, of course, we as the practitioners, we set the way that we work. And I know there's some people who will listen to this, and I can think of some who have even been on here that parents always in the room if they're under 18, which the dynamic of, I think, how we set up that situation is what makes it the make or break. That, the same phrasing could work for someone else if they're in the room. But I think we're in very different times right now where that slightly, let's use the word provocative moment of going, okay, wait in the lobby, having that exit point. I mean, I've got someone coming, I'll be generic for obvious reasons, but I've got someone coming in the next, let's say, month that it's probably going to be the first time I actually say to the parent, yeah, there's a shopping mall down the road because I just need them out of the space for everything I've learned going into it.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
And this is the landscape of high school right now is different than it's ever been. And, Penn Jillette talked about this better than anybody. You look at people who are like, man, these millennials, man, these kids who don't understand and participation trophies and all that stuff. Penn Jillette talked about, we have to stop hating these kids for living in the world we created and gave them. And they are a product of our environment, not theirs. They are a product of our environment that we created. And so to that extent, creating a new environment for them and a space where they believe that, they're respected, their privacy is respected, that they can be candid, that, we can be in control of this and that we're going to teach them how to do things better. And just to keep giving them a little bit of perspective and to dole out that perspective, because you can't just say, oh, that doesn't matter. Oh, that doesn't matter. Oh, who cares what grade you got? When you're 40, no one's going to remember that. But they're not going to be 40 for a long time. So they have to wait until they're 40 before they stop caring. And so figuring out how to work with them in the realities of their space is hugely rewarding to me right now. And I'm loving the work, maybe more than ever because of it.
I'm flashing back to an extremely specific reference here, which was that one of the last plays I worked in the theater career was a play by the name of Hearts by the playwright Willie Holtzman. And the play was interesting because it's one of these plays where there's 4 actors and one actor is on stage the entire time. He's the lead character. And the other 3 actors then play the other 75 roles.
Sure.
And the play was interesting just for what it's worth. It was originally written for guys in their early 20s to play the full range. And the playwright had reached out to our theater to have us do it again, this time with actors who were in their 60s. As he put it, this way it'd be more of a memory piece rather than the actors showing. And the basic scenario was that these were the guys who were all veterans back to World War II, and they got together and they played cards. Thus the name of the play, Hearts.
Sure.
And the whole premise was that, here's what grandpa's dealing with. And suddenly he reads the magazine about PTSD and goes, oh shit, is that what I've been dealing with all these years? So finally, there's a name to what he's been dealing with rather than just, leave it as it is. Oh, you're fine. This is what happens to people. But we find ourselves in a culture where now the opportunity to speak about it. I mean, I flash back to, my first month at college, and we're taking a few days off because it was 9/11. And just to have these places where people can go and talk things through, which not to say just talking about the problem resolves the entire issue, but in that description of how you're building that space, you're giving them that, as well as now, let's bring in the hypnotic tools to get them through it and leave them stronger as a result of it.
Yeah. And, one of the things I talk about a lot actually is when you think about what a cell phone is, and I am pro technology. I'm the biggest pro technology person I think I know on earth. I really, really am. I love it. And a cell phone is 2/3 of the definition of God. It is all knowing because it's connected to Google and Wikipedia. It is all present because you can FaceTime anyone or, drop into a whole bunch of Instagram live streams, but it is not all powerful. So that means we're taking 2/3 of the definition of God and giving it to a 14-year-old with no instructions and just hoping that works out on its own, which is the story of Icarus, right? And you have this amazing technology and this powerful tool, and then the kids fly too high and crash because of it. And so if we can teach these kids how to use this tech right and how to use this tech well, instead of just saying, oh, social media and Facebook are the devil, but understanding that these kids actually have a sixth sense that you and I don't have. I mean, Jason and I are among the most social network heavy hypnotists around, and we've got nothing. I used to call it Facebook.
Yeah.
What did I call Facebook? The Jason Linett Vanity Project, something like that.
Right. Yeah. Have you seen Jason Linett's new website? It's Facebook.
Oh, that's what I called it. Yeah. I mean, Jason and I are on there. We're doing a lot, and we got nothing on these kids. They genuinely came up in a time where they have instant global connection to everyone they care about, which is amazing. And the only problem with that is the bullies and people who are mean have no boundaries either. They can always get into your bedroom. No matter where you are, the bullies can follow you. And I mean, I just had this, this is crazy. My babysitter for my kid was late the other day because she was being cyber bullied so aggressively that there were people outside her home. Wow. And it's just a completely different world. And so helping these people, these young people, develop the right skills and resources to succeed in that space is complex. And it's not just they need to unplug or I'm going to take their phone away, because that's torture. If I said, if you don't get an A on your next math test, I'm going to remove one of your 5 senses for an hour. I'm just going to blindfold you for an hour because you didn't get a good grade. That sounds pretty messed up. And when you look at the withdrawal symptoms of kids when they get their phones taken away, it is a profound disruption in their dopamine systems. And so when you're messing with their dopamine indiscriminately, you need to be really mindful of unintended consequences. And, cell phones are amazing dopamine machines, and YouTube and Facebook have some of the most advanced artificial intelligence systems on the planet that are designed to generate dopamine in its users. And they're great at it. They're billion-dollar companies because of that. Mm-hmm. And we need to figure out how to, utilize that to help these kids.
I put up a video, by the way, earlier today, and you haven't liked it yet.
Yeah, see? Like, that's the thing is like that.
Again, it's not going anywhere. And it's just going to get even stronger, which to pull some strategy out of this, I love the nuance of the theatrical blocking of how to build that environment where now we've got the place where we can actually get in and address some of these anxieties, some of these traumatic triggers. What would be your recommendation for folks who want to work with more more teenagers of this age.
Yeah. Well, so number one, anybody who's wearing a tie or dressed formally, no, just punch yourself for a little while.
I
And
already did yours. Thank you.
yeah, I mean, like genuinely, I wear jeans and tennis shoes when I'm seeing clients now, and no shirt at all. I should be, no, I wear a collared shirt and jeans and tennis shoes, and I'm really laid back. I'm reclined in a chair, and everything I'm demonstrating is, look, I'm serious, I care, but I'm not going to take any of this too seriously because I have confidence that we're going to get there together. And so if you want to work in this space, the first thing is you've got to really understand and respect the different landscape these kids have than you had. And it is different and it's not their fault. And I mean, that's step one, is just doing that. And then I would say step two is something that's much more painful than that, which is watch some of these YouTube videos of influencer marketing. Watch these teenage, and the PewDiePie and like all these people that are hugely popular with 15-year-olds. Just watch an hour of it and just understand how dramatically different your processing is from theirs.
Have you seen, of course it was Bo Burnham, but have you seen 8th Grade?
Yeah, Bo Burnham, watch that. That's a great idea.
Amazing. Yeah.
Won a ton of awards. And yeah, if you guys want to work in this space, go watch 8th Grade by Bo Burnham. It's really... 13 was another movie a couple years ago that was a similar kind of thing. There was also another movie called Kids before that. And there's this reoccurring theme every 10 years or every generation. There's a movie that comes out that, personifies that group. And 8th Grade came out last year and it's doing a perfect job of it.
Yeah. I have no transition to this, but we're coming up on time. But we got to spend some time chatting about HypnoThoughts Platinum.
Oh, yeah. Why do we need, speaking of uncomfortable transition. Yeah. So HypnoThoughts Platinum is coming up in February. I'm really excited about this. This is something that we've talked internally about off and on for a while. I wanted to do it sooner, but Richard Clark said, look, let's just get let's get the biggest before we get the second. And so we did that. And the idea really is around getting 6 voices, 6 commentaries and 6 topics that blend well together so that we're curating for the attendees what they're going to learn. Because when we do HypnoThoughts Live, the whole point is let's get as diverse a speaker list and topic set as possible. And so this is intentionally going in the opposite direction because there's so many people who come up to us and say, well, what do you think I should go do? What do you think I should go take? What class should I go see now? And, people ask me that 100 times every year. And so the answer to that is this. Here's a list of 1 weekend, 6 presenters, and just sit in the room. And it's all going to point towards outcomes that are designed for people who actually want to see clients and really do the work.
Yeah, what I love about this, and there's a dialogue in a Facebook group. Hey, back to the old conversation. Dialogue in a Facebook group about what should I submit for this event, for that event, and the common feedback is always I don't want to go to a 1 hour that's just an infomercial to attend the 2 hour, right, or something that someone's just selling the product, but to get 4 hours of each speaker, of just deep diving into something. So you are leaving with something tangible. You're leaving with something actionable that, as I'm looking through the lineup, I mean, there's things that, here's what I'm teaching on, search engine strategy for the hypnotist, which is basically going to deliver your entire business plan, at least for the next couple of years. And that would be enough because it's going to hit all different multimedia markets. But looking at the number of people who are a little bit more, I'm the only one really talking full business, but looking at how, there's hands-on practice, there's actual time to integrate the information.
And a good chunk of what Ken's going to teach about is going to blend really well with you in terms of business stuff. Yeah. And it's really cool because, the 6 presenters, number one, we had real conversations with them about, look, we want to make sure you're speaking to an elevated audience from the average conference. And we really want this to be, I hate the expression, but like an advanced class. And anyone's welcome. I just think that there are people who don't normally come to conferences because they don't want to be, average. And they like, look, I've been doing this long enough. That's exactly who this is for, is people who are like in process, seeing clients, doing real work, not just people who one day want to. Although, if somebody's a one day I want to, they're obviously welcome to come. But the other cool thing that all six of you that I'm really happy to have heard is that all six of you guys have said you're going to be hanging out in the room. You'll be helping facilitate, when there's breaking up into groups, you guys will all be around so you can hear, each person's stuff in slightly different voices, because we're going to have just an awesome, like just room full of people.
Yeah, absolutely. Which, looking through the lineup, David Snyder, Melissa Tiers, Kelly T. Woods, Ken Gutza, myself, Steve Rame, and looking at the range of information, whether it's, I love this masterclass in brain change, subtle communication, the importance of unconscious communication. Rather intrigued by Kelly's presentation on living hypnotically and some of the practice strategies she's already referenced inside of that, but seeing a nice range of stuff that, how this is something I found. I did a podcast a couple of months ago about student responsibility for learning, which I did that almost a little tongue in cheek, because I had an event that I'd hosted that 25 in the room were going, that was amazing. That's one of the best classes I went to. And one person was going, that's the worst thing I ever went to. And looking at it from, okay, so the numbers, the statistics are there to say, okay, it was a good class. Yet what was different with that one individual that, as we get more refined in our skills, I love the nuance you mentioned about, the people who are already out there working. We don't necessarily need every training to be, life-changing. How sometimes it is just a few little nuances, a little bit better way of delivering something. Part of the reason why I specifically wanted to have you on this call before I had that session that I've got in a couple of weeks, which is I'm going to send the mom to the mall.
Right.
But to have that aspect of how, we can get hands-on, we can learn some new strategies, create more flexibility working with our clients, and not just get the 1 hour sampler where at the end of it, maybe they do a demo, but in the course of 4 hours of content, let's really dive into this thing.
Yeah. And, with these six and what they're talking about, like the opportunities for each one of those presenters to drop one or two gems that could change anyone's perspective on the work is really high. Like I've used this example before, but I just like it a lot. I don't know, maybe 8 years ago, maybe 10 years ago. I've been doing this work for 20 years now. So 8 or 10 years ago, I was still pretty seasoned. I was still a decade or more into this. And I went to a training with Mark Cunningham was the instructor. And I had seen a lot of his work before and all that. And he was teaching something, and it doesn't matter what, I don't even remember. But he said one throwaway sentence that I loved. And he said, anytime I'm doing script work, I never waste a doorway. And I said, wait, what's that mean? And he said, anytime a client ever walks through any doorway in any session I do, that doorway is a threshold of change. And once you go through, you'll never go back. You are transformed by walking through this doorway. And every doorway in every script, I'm not going to waste one. Every doorway is a portal to another stage of something. And when I heard that, I just started thinking about how many little things I could refine and how many doorways I've wasted in client sessions. And, metaphorically, maybe literally using doorways, but all the other, intricacies of that. So just that one sentence changed the way I did session works from then on. Just that sentence.
I've lived by the phrase that we do things differently here, being the undertone of The Office, and kind of being playfully, not necessarily called out, but calling myself out on my own from something I saw Ken Gutzo talk about years ago. And this is a part of his presentation. I know that if you're looking for the experience to be transformative, don't greet them with small talk. Hey, how was traffic? How was parking? That's not what they're there for. Hit the ground running as soon as they're in the door. And that was something that I was kind of already doing, but to hear someone else's take on it just completely refined how the greeting is now part of the process even stronger than it was before, and giving them some sort of experience that, again, back to the theatrical blocking, we're not going to graduate into the hypnosis room until I know you're ready to do so.
And going back to something theatrical that you and I have actually talked about before in a different interview.
This is going to be the episode where we just like do the show notes and reference every episode.
Right. The Stanislavski thing, right? The method acting, where everything your character does has to be pointed towards their ultimate outcome of success. And you do the same thing with the session, where making sure everything is pointed towards that client's betterment, let's just call it, whatever that means. And so making sure that you're not taking 10 minutes off, and you're not, just, oh, well, who cares about that? Because all that really matters is this. But realizing that when you stack everything in your favor, and I think it's fair to say, ethically, you could argue that you owe it to your clients to do the best you can to stack everything in their favor, not just figure out what you can get away with to get the change work done that they asked for.
Beautiful. Which, of course, when you gave your talk on Stanislavski at the Mid-America Hypnosis Conference, the next morning I was giving the keynote telling the exact same story, but through the filter of the bio of Katy Perry.
It's a solid bio. I mean, it's not as good as Jules.
Well,
Jules,
let's not open up that. So,
sorry.
Very, very specific joke. So where can people learn more about HypnoThoughts Platinum?
htplatinum.net. We are owning the .net, internet. So htlive.net and htplatinum.net are where you go to find out about everything we're doing. And, it's really, really fun. And it's intentionally different from HypnoThoughts Live. There's a lot of hanging out outside, small talking with your mentors. And that's an important part of the conference. Lunch will be outside, lots of fresh air, lots of palm trees, lots of bonfires, and just a fun, beautiful event where people are going to get much, much better at doing the real work.
Jason Linett here once again, and as always, thank you so much for interacting with this program, leaving your reviews online, sharing it on your social media streams. I'd share a little bit of a personal nuance that I love, which this was not the intention of this program, but when it happens, man, it's awesome. So if you tracked my schedule, I was just off in Brisbane. I was just off in Australia for the first time ever. I got to do the closing keynote at the Australian Hypnotherapist Association World Conference, an amazing event. They only do it once every 5 years. So in 5 years' time, you got to be there. And it's an international event. It was amazing. And there's some really cool people that I met who are going to be coming on this program rather soon. So over in the world of the MMHA Facebook group, that's the Mike Mandel Hypnosis Academy group, there were suddenly a bunch of conversations that popped up, and people's responses to the questions were to post various episodes of this podcast. Not necessarily just the ones that are just me talking and sharing my stuff, but people chiming in and sharing specific interviews and conversations. There was a dialogue about selective eating disorder at one point, and unprompted, someone was then posting the Felix Economakis episode, which to look at now, we're 5 years into this, more than 500,000 downloads in more than 80 plus countries. The fact that this is a free resource I put out every week, and not even free, because I'll openly tell you it runs me about $250 a week to produce this program, from the designers to the editors to everything. And I'm doing this program right when it's conversations that I want to have, kind of like this week's, that you all happen to get the ability to listen to. The opportunity that we had a bit of a bump effect this year at HypnoThoughts Live, that a lot of folks were going, oh, I'm in Joni's class because I heard her on your podcast. I'm in Martin's class because I heard him on your podcast. And to look at this resource, so again, your best feedback to me is not just going online and leaving reviews or joining my online communities, though of course you're welcome to. It's the fact that this has become this ongoing resource for this incredible community. So feel free to leave a review online if you haven't yet done so, but go back into the library, find an episode that you learned something specific from, the way that Scott told the story of one specific phrase from Mark Cunningham, who again, someday we need to get him on the program, and share that to one of the Facebook groups. Share it somewhere, of course, that's appropriate to do so, because that's why we keep this thing running. So thanks for listening. Join us all at HypnoThoughts Platinum. Details online again at htplatinum.net. We've got that all set up for you, and we'll see you soon. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to the Work Smart Hypnosis podcast at WorkSmartHypnosis.com.
Hey there, it's Jason, and I want you to be one of the first to find out as we upload amazing new content. So do this right now. Click the subscribe button right here on this video. That's going to link you to our YouTube channel here, and you will be the first to find out as new resources and downloads are made available. Do it now.